We know Virginia is going to take a step back in 2020. The question is, how much of a step back? Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, the best kept secret in all of college football. Today, bringing you our 2020 Virginia Cavaliers college football predictions. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos as we continue to make our way through the ACC, as well as predicting every other Power 5 team. Also, make sure to check out everything down in our description below, where you can check out exclusive content on our website, thegridironexpert.com, and follow us on all of our social media pages over on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So it was a very historic 2019 season for Bronco Mendenhall and Virginia. The Cavaliers went 9-5, winning their first ever Coastal Division title and making their first ever Orange Bowl appearance. Yes, they did lose to Clemson in the ACC title game, and yes, they did lose to Florida in an Orange Bowl game that was closer than many expected, but it was a monumental season for Virginia football. And when you take a look at their roster going into 2020, it really isn't too bad. They have a lot of experience returning from last year's squad. But you can't help but overlook the gaping hole at quarterback, because Virginia does lose their star, Bryce Perkins, who is one of the most elusive and best players in the entire ACC in 2019. Of course, he was the leading passer for Virginia, but he was also their leading rusher. So that's some major shoes to fill for the Cavaliers, and it's going to be up to Brennan Armstrong or Keytaon Thompson, the transfer quarterback from Mississippi State, to lead this Virginia football team and build chemistry with their pass catchers, which is another depleted area on Virginia's roster as they lose two of their top three wide receivers from last year's squad. So they've got to build some chemistry with the wide receivers. They've got to find themselves a quarterback, but regardless of what happens there, at least they'll be well protected. The offensive line going to be very, very strong for the Cavaliers. When you look at their defense, they returned 9 starters. That might be the strength for Virginia this season. That might be the difference maker in a few of these games if the offense isn't able to get anything going. Yes, they allowed 27.1 points per game in 2019. Yes, they do lose Jordan Mack, who had 7.5 sacks last year. And they do lose Bryce Hall in the secondary. But their linebacking core is very, very deep. Got a lot of depth there. They've got Charles Snowden. They've got Lane Zandier. And the secondary, as we mentioned, despite losing Bryce Hall, is still going to remain a strength for Virginia. I'm very, very excited to watch this Cavaliers squad going into 2020. And they kick things off with a very tough neutral site game against Georgia. Look, I have said it over and over again. I wish this game was being played last year. I would have loved to have seen Bryce Perkins going up against this Georgia team. But of course, as fate would have it, that's not how it played out. And this is going to be tough because Virginia, with those quarterback questions, did not have spring practice. And of course, the same can be said for Georgia, as they didn't have spring practice to go through a new quarterback with Jamie Newman or JT Daniels, both now transfers into the Bulldogs program. But the one thing that Georgia does have going for them is arguably the best defense in all of college football. They allowed just 12.6 points per game last year. And so while this could be a low-scoring game, Georgia's defense is going to have a field day against a relatively inexperienced Virginia offense. And the Bulldogs start off 1-0. That's, of course, not the way you want to kick things off after a pandemic. That's, of course, not how you want to kick things off after losing so much talent offensively, but you do what you got to do. I think Georgia takes care of business, though, relatively easily in Charlotte. They come back with a win over the Virginia Military Institute. They get a win over UConn as well, now members of the Independents, no longer members of the American Athletic Conference. And we're going to give them a loss here on the road at Clemson. And we don't mean to quickly dismiss the game against the Tigers, but Virginia last year fell to them 62-17 in the ACC title game. And I really don't think, with a road game now in Death Valley, with questions on both sides of the ball, more so offensively than defensively, that Virginia can go in and take down maybe the best offense in the entire country. So they fall to Clemson. They are 2-2 going into a crucial game against North Carolina. Because here's the thing, guys. The ACC Coastal Division is still relatively wide open. We know Miami, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and maybe throw Pittsburgh in there are legitimate contenders. What about the reigning champs? What about the guys that won it all last year? What about Virginia? They are certainly still in the hunt to win this division. And they are lucky. They get to host North Carolina. They get to host Miami. They get to host Louisville and Pittsburgh. All the big games for Virginia are at home, that if they want to repeat as Coastal champions, they get that slight edge in doing so. They get this home game against North Carolina here, a team that Virginia did beat 38-31 last year, a game that was crucial in deciding who would win that Coastal Division. This is going to be very interesting and very tough for Virginia's defense. That's where this game comes down to, is really how well Virginia's defense fares against North Carolina's offense. Sam Howell, leading one of the most prolific passing attacks in the country, now coming to Virginia, trying to get revenge after that 7-point loss last year. And here's the thing, guys. I think Virginia's defense steps up big, and I think they upset Mack Brown and the Tar Heels. Yes, we do have them beating North Carolina. Now, it was tempting to pick the Tar Heels here. Maybe Virginia's a little hungover after this, maybe perhaps beat down to Clemson. North Carolina may be high on themselves as well after a potential very, very strong start, and certainly more battle-tested, perhaps, with a very tough 3-game slate to kick off their season. But I like Virginia's defense in their secondary to step up big. I like their linebacking core to slow down that running game for North Carolina. Yeah, the defense is going to be great for the Tar Heels, sure. But I think that it's going to come down to defensive edge. I like Virginia, and I like their home field advantage. They steal a huge win over the Tar Heels. They get their bye week on October 10th, coming into a road game at Georgia Tech. So they get a week of rest off a huge win, 3-2, road game at the Yellow Jackets, a team that averaged just 16.7 points per game last year and went just 3-9. You would think this would be an easy win for the Cavaliers. And I say not so fast. I'm going to give the Cavaliers a loss here to the Yellow Jackets. Now, hold on. I know exactly what you're thinking. How can you say they're going to beat North Carolina, but they're going to lose to Georgia Tech after a bye week? That is ridiculous. Not really. We know Virginia's team last year was better than the Virginia team we're going to see this year. In theory, Georgia Tech's squad is going to be better this year than they were last year. Keep in mind the Yellow Jackets returned 17 starters, including 10 on offense, as they continue to adjust and adapt to Jeff Collins' new system. Last year, at Virginia, the Cavaliers only beat the Yellow Jackets 33-28. That game was way too close considering the talent gap that was supposed to be there in 2019. So now Virginia has to travel to Atlanta to take on Jeff Collins and his squad. This is a Georgia Tech team that maybe you don't see a slight increase in the win column, but you will see it in competitiveness, and they did have it at times last year. I think they get a quality win. Last year their quality win was Miami. This year it could be Virginia. I think the Yellow Jackets get a huge win at home, dropping the Cavaliers to 3-3. It makes sense, guys. It makes sense when you really, really think about it. They do come back, though, on the road at Old Dominion. Certainly a game they cannot afford to overlook, but an Old Dominion team that did go 1-11 last year, and one of those 11 losses did come to Virginia as the Cavaliers overcame a slow start to win 28-17. So boom, just like that, they're back above 500. They're 4-3, and I think, guys, really, that Bronco Mendenhall uses this Georgia Tech game as a wake-up call. Because this will drop them to 3-3, and they want to go bowling, and they have the talent to do just that. And he'll say, guys, that's unacceptable. In theory, we are better than Georgia Tech. We've got to straighten some things out, especially with huge games coming up in the back half of their schedule. So they beat Old Dominion, and guess what? We've got them beating Miami. Holy cow. What? Losing to Georgia Tech, but you've got us beating UNC and Miami? Absolutely I do, and here's why. Miami. They defeated Virginia 17-9 last year. That game was played in Miami. Yes, in theory, the Hurricanes are going to be a little bit better in 2020, you would think. Because now they bring in Derek King. The offensive line should improve after being one of the best, or one of the worst in the country. But But I look at this. Miami thrived last year on their pass rush. Had a fantastic pass rush led by Gregory Rousseau. And now they've got Quincy Roche, the transfer from Temple, to come help them out as well. Virginia's offensive line is pretty dang good. They're very deep. They're very strong. They're very experienced. So I like Virginia's offensive line to take care of business here. It's going to give whoever's under center, Brennan Armstrong or Keytaon Thompson, to have time to get it out to his receivers who by Halloween will have had time to build up some chemistry. And I think Miami kind of falls into a little bit of a trap here and a bit of a revenge game for Virginia, and the Cavaliers and Bronco Mendenhall steal a win over the Hurricanes. So yeah, two big tough games within the Coastal Division, and Virginia's won both of them. So they're still in the hunt to maybe win the division. Huge win over Miami, and they follow that up with a huge win over Louisville. Unbelievable, I know. Louisville, the key for them is not their offense, because we know they're going to be pretty dang good. They averaged over 30 points per game last year. Yes, they defeated Virginia 28-21 last year, but the key for the Cardinals and Scott Satterfield is their defense. They scored over 30, but they also allowed over 30 per game in 2019. Can they take a major step forward? Can they take a major step forward? So you look at this game, if it becomes a high-scoring shootout, the edge goes to Louisville here, without a doubt. But I think Virginia's defense and Bronco Mendenhall has a game plan to slow down that offense enough that will allow Virginia to maybe own the time of possession to score just enough points. I mean, guys, last year was just a 28-21 game. Virginia gets to host this game this year. This is a game where their defense steps up big. If you take away Louisville's offense, you basically take away that entire team. I think they do just that. So after that heartbreaking and disappointing loss to Georgia Tech, we have the Cavaliers winning 3 straight, and boom, they're back in the postseason. They've clinched 6 wins. So they're going bowling. And with only a few losses here, 2 of which are only in conference play, they are still in the hunt for a Coastal title because they now own the tiebreaker over North Carolina and Miami, assuming they are legitimate contenders as well. They come into their final 3 games of the season, 2 of which come on the road, 1 of which comes at home. First one is on the road against Duke. Virginia defeated the Blue Devils 48-14 last year. And I hate to say it, guys, but I've got the Blue Devils winning this game over the Cavaliers. And I'm not really putting too much stock into home field advantage in this one. That's not a major reason why I've got Duke winning it. I think this is just one of those trap games for Virginia, especially when you look at what David Cutcliffe is probably going to be able to do with Chase Bryce. Duke's offense wasn't all that great last year, as indicated by the annihilation they had from the Cavaliers last year. But Chase Bryce is a very highly touted transfer, comes in from Clemson, working with one of the best quarterback gurus in the country, and you've got a Duke secondary here that's going to be one of the better ones in the ACC. They have a very strong secondary, very underrated secondary, and I look at that and I say, all right, Virginia might have to lean a little bit more on the passing game this year. They're coming on the road to play Duke. I think Duke gets at least 2 takeaways in this game. I think Chase Bryce throws at least for 250. And I think the Blue Devils get a crucial win at home because while Virginia's already clinched bowl eligibility, that's great. Duke is still going to be fighting for theirs. And they get a huge win at home over Bronco Mendenhall. Virginia then returns home, a little hungover after a bad loss to Duke. They fall to Pittsburgh. I look at this Pittsburgh team, a team that, yes, Virginia did defeat 30-14 in Pittsburgh last year, but a team that I do think takes a little bit of a step forward in 2020. Kenny Pickett should be able to improve last year. He threw for over 3,000 yards, but just had 13 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. That's certainly not going to cut it. So I think you look at that, Kenny Pickett takes a slight step forward. Their defense, which is one of the best in the ACC last year, 1st in sacks per game, 9th in the country in tackles for loss per game, 12th in rushing defense per game. Is going to try to get through this offensive line and really try to make Virginia win this game on the ground, something that I do not think they're going to be able to do. Pittsburgh comes in and steals a win at Virginia, which means you set up the huge in-state rivalry game, Virginia Tech. And of course, in rivalry games like this that are so heated, sometimes if you just beat your rival, you consider it a successful season. Some teams and some fans I've talked to have said, if we just beat this team, I don't care if we go 1-11. If our wins over Ohio State, if our wins over Michigan, if our wins over Virginia, Virginia Tech, Auburn, Alabama, it is a great season. And we know that last year, Virginia snapped the 15-game losing streak to the Hokies. Virginia snapped a 15-game losing streak to Virginia Tech, defeating them 39-30 and ultimately sending them to the ACC championship game. You look at this Virginia Tech team, guys, they returned 19 starters from last year, and you can bet your money they've got big-time revenge on their mind. Yes, they lose Bud Foster, but they were a completely different team when Hendon Hooker was under center. They were, I believe, 2-3 without him, 2-5 without him, 6-2 with him. 6-2 with him. He has a big game at home. The fans, the few that might be there, play a huge role in this one. Most of these games since Bronco Mendenhall has arrived have been relatively close. But the Hokies try to start a brand new streak over the Cavaliers, who were unable to start a streak of their own. They dropped 3 straight to end the year, lose to their in-state rival, finish 6-6. We said that Virginia was going to take a step back. We all know Virginia is going to take a step back. The key for them, of course, is going to be their quarterback. How well does Brennan Armstrong play? How well does Keytaon Thompson play? How well does both play if Bronco Mendenhall chooses to split time between the two? That's going to be the key and maybe the difference maker in a few of these games. Now, I know you look at the schedule and you say, this is ridiculous. You have us winning against North Carolina, Miami, Louisville, but losing to Duke, losing to Georgia Tech. Once again, go look at the numbers, go look at the results from last year, especially in that Georgia Tech game, which I think will shock more than potentially the Blue Devils game. Look at the numbers, look at a little bit of logic. It makes sense. Add a win there if you want. You're still 7-5. It's still a step back. But regardless, Virginia will be going bowling this year for the 4th straight season. And that will be the first time they've ever done that since 2002 to 2005. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at The Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos as we continue to predict every single Power 5 team. Check out everything down in the description below for exclusive content on our website, thegridironexpert.com, and exclusive content on our social media pages over on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.